Before the show starts, this is a reminder to all our listeners that the podcast is an open discussion forum and not meant to be used as a source of direct professional help. We at Panic Stations UK would always urge anybody listening to go seek advice from their GP, that is their doctor, a counsellor or a therapist. The podcast is, however, a place for people to share experiences and realise that you are not alone. Due to the subject matter discussed in the shows, some episodes may have explicit language in. I warn listeners as this is meant to be a realistic look at mental health. As such, you may find that some of the guests use some pretty colourful language. I ask all listeners just to freely accept this and to honour the guests that are on the show. It's their journey and it's their freedom of speech, and we at Panic Stations UK would never do anything to discourage that. Many thanks and enjoy the show. Welcome back. This is episode 2 of Panic Stations UK, and we're getting a tremendous amount of feedback, which is really, really good. I'm your host, Chris Jones, and with me today again is Ben Coker, as I promised from the previous episode. I said he'd come back and we'd talk a bit more about a few things. I said I'd put a pin on it because we were doing a 2.5 hour podcast, and this is the extension of that. So here is Ben again.
Hello.
There we go again, man of many words. Yes, basically we were going to discuss a few extra things like family background with Ben, because we didn't really get a chance to delve with that. We're going to also talk about previous anxiety experiences. I'll put my teeth back in, and so it's been really good. But first of all, I'd just like to thank everybody that's been supportive so far of this podcast. You've been absolutely fantastic. You mean the world to me, and I mean that. It's absolutely fantastic how many people have been coming forward about it and just liking the page. We've got a Facebook page now. Everybody's liking that. We're getting people, not just my own personal friends, but people who I don't know who are obviously jumping on and going, actually, this is a good idea. Fantastic. Please feel free, share the love, express the podcast out there to people, just throw it out there to people. That'd be absolutely fantastic. We're all good. We're about to get some more music as well. We've got some more music off other people today. We've got some music off a man called Stevan Williams, who's absolutely fantastic, talented guy, and he's going to be ending the show for us. And then we've got Whistler's Mother as well. They're a really good band, and I think you're going to enjoy them a lot. So anyway, last time we left, we talked about coping strategies with panic attacks. And obviously, if anybody who's catching speed, this is their first time on the podcast, just go back to episode 1. Very easy, because this will be the second one, so there's only 2 of them so far. And you'll be able to hear some of the tips that we gave towards panic attacks and issues and how to deal with those. So this time around, we're going to talk about Ben's family background, because I think we're going to delve a little bit more into. It's very hard to turn around and just throw the blame, and I'm not throwing the blame of anybody's mental health just on their family. Far from it. And I know Ben's family; they're lovely people. It's the same as everybody. It's sort of a mixture of different things. But I think a few things did affect Ben, and I think he's been very brave, and he's coming towards us as the listeners and the reviewer and myself, the reviewer of the interviewer, to discuss his background, which will be really, really good. So Ben, what were you going to say before in the previous podcast, which we kind of put a pin in, and I'm taking that pin out so we can talk about it now?
My family background, like I suppose a lot of people, had its ups and downs. It wasn't. There was probably a few more downs than ups, but I think it was purely on the fact that it was just. I think it was just my parents were just the wrong people for each other, and I don't want to diss that. I don't want to slag it off at all, because I wouldn't be here if
well, yeah,
if that didn't happen. But it was obvious from the outset they weren't suited to each other, and you feel the feedback. You feel the like the energy of confrontations when they argued. So it was kind of it was difficult, but and I think it didn't just affect us as children. I think it affected mum and dad as well. So it was a difficult time. I chose to I was sent to boarding school as a weekly boarder because the boarding school was a little bit too far. I eventually chose to become a full boarder,
right,
which I think helped me beyond measure, because I could. It got me away from the family home, and when you're stuck in the family home for, I don't know, 20 years, non-stop, it does kind of start to grate, I think. So a little break really helped. And that wasn't the first time I left home either. I went when I went to university, I left home as well, so that was quite an event. But by that time, my parents had separated, and they were going their own separate ways, and everything was starting to settle down a bit. But I've definitely learnt from them both what to do and what not to do. I've definitely got my empathy from my mum, and I suppose I didn't really get any focus from my dad. I'm not really particularly as focused as he is. But there's definitely things that I picked up from my dad as well. His, I mean, if I had, when I have children, I'm, going to give them like pocket money and things like that. But I'm not going to just give it to them willy-nilly. They've got to earn that. They've got to earn that respect. They've got to earn it instead of me just giving it to them.
Was that something that happened quite frequently in your household?
That was something that there was two sides of the coin, so to speak. Dad would try and give us allowance, and Mum would just go, "Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you can have that."
So that's completely different from one end of the spectrum to the other, isn't it? That's a lot of mixed messages. Straight.
Exactly. Yeah. And on that matter, I have to side with my dad. I think allowance was a good idea. It was just really badly executed and orchestrated. And he is. I think he's the way he is because of his. Well, he is the way he is because of his parents. And every family has their issues. But I don't think he really learnt as much as me and my siblings are learning from his mistakes. But not just his mistakes, his the things he got right as well. I think we're in a good position to really have a good grip on our lives, learning from their mistakes and gaining knowledge as well. Because there are things that my mum, her empathy, definitely.
It's important to be empathic, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
You're screwed if you haven't got empathy. You just become a cold husk of a person if you haven't got empathy.
It's very hard to connect to somebody, I find, if they're not so much, I don't want to say cold, but if they're emotionally guarded, it's hard to get through that. And there's so many. I've got friends out there that people will go, oh, so and so. Oh yeah, I'm not a big fan, because they've had trouble getting past that emotional guard. And sometimes people with very high barriers, emotional barriers, you need to give them patience so they can lower them a little bit to get behind that. I've had people say that about myself as well, in certain respects, certainly when I was at university, and things like that. But yeah, I mean, like, going back to what you were saying about the ideas with what your dad got right with, like, things like allowance and things like that, and all the mixed messages that were kind of going on within the home. I think it's really, really essential. The message you're saying there is about the fact that you're being positive about a situation that you learn from, rather than let it control you. Because I think it's very, very easy, and I can be certainly guilty of this, where the situation, because it's so personal and affects you in such a deep way, it may not affect others in the same respect, but for others it will affect you in such a way that you will always revisit those memories and not move past that. And I think any healthy exchange of emotion should always be sort of to push, not so much push past it. Let me rephrase that. It was to move on and grow as an individual. I think for anybody in the listening audience is going, hang on a second, can anybody hear a child, by the way, sort of shouting in the background? That's my little girl. We're recording at the moment at 6:30 in the evening, UK time, and because we're recording it, it's roughly around the sort of time that she goes to bed. So my wife's downstairs with our daughter Skylar, and unfortunately Skylar gets a little bit boisterous when she's very, very tired, and she's exceptionally tired at the moment because she hasn't been very well. So any of the screams that you hear in the background, this sounds so dodgy. Any screams of children that you hear in the background is perfectly fine. No, it's literally her sort of denying brushing her teeth and getting a bit whiny because it's about time to go to bed. So yeah, please bear with us on that one. But yes, yeah, like we were saying before about the exchange of emotion and kind of going to grow as a person. And everybody can be very guilty of staying in the past, and absolutely. It's a good idea to learn from it. And from what you're saying, you learn from the mistakes the parents made, because not everything's bad. It's not all black and white, because your parents are both absolutely wonderful people, and I'm sure you'd agree with that. It's just one of those situations where things have happened in the past, and it's kind of just, obviously it hasn't gelled as well as it could have potentially before, or there's been situations where you've not been able to sort of control, because you can't control these situations as a child, because they're out of your control. The two adults fighting, they're the ones who are in control.
You also think that, and I'm sure everyone will agree with this, that you, as a kid, you kind of think that is your fault, but and then you suddenly realise that it's not your fault, and despite you can think all you want that it is your fault, but 9 times out of 10 it isn't your fault at all. It's just your parents not seeing eye to eye. They're not working successfully as a team. That's all it comes down to. A difference of opinion. But going back to the positivity of, I think I definitely got that from my mum. Being able to look at a situation and draw a positive, something positive from it, instead of just looking at everything bad. So in that respect, the fact that I am who I am now could be partially thanks, in a big way, thanks to my mother, because she gave me that ability to see the good in people, and as everyone knows, when it comes to people, I'm very patient, I'm very forgiving,
definitely,
I'm very loyal. So yes, just for all the bad, there's definitely a lot of good that came out of it.
Do you mind? This is, let's put you on the spot. A bit of a personal question. Was there quite a lot of all the good stuff, like you say? Because I know you've off air, obviously not as we know each other as friends in the real world, and when we've spoken about you, like some of the stuff that's happened in the past, you've always been like some of the stories you come out with, the fantastic, really lovely stories about, like everybody should have, like growing up. And unfortunately, that's not always the case with some people. It certainly won't be the case with some of the listeners. It certainly wasn't the case all the time with myself, but there were some amazing times for me growing up as well. So it's like yourself, a flip of the coin. Like, were they at odds quite a lot, your parents?
Yeah, they were. They didn't really see eye to eye on how to bring up kids, because my mum had one way of doing it. She'd been brought up in one way of doing it, and my dad had been brought up in another way. So yeah, they were very at odds with how to raise us. And I always say, I've said this to my dad quite a few times, that in their own chaotic, messed up way, it worked really well. We actually are. I mean, I don't want to sound big-headed, but there are people with far more issues, and they haven't dealt with their parent issues particularly well. But I think I've done a little bit better.
Mate, you're one of the most rounded people I know. So, and same with your brothers and your sister. Like all your family, every family member I've ever met of yours are lovely. They're just absolutely lovely. Like you say, like they're really nice people. Your mum's lovely. Your dad's always been really lovely whenever I spoke to him. And yeah, and I think, like you say, sometimes it's the circumstances of like the gel of like perhaps, and I think I think sometimes that's the issue with relationships. It's certainly the issue when it comes to when relationships go sour. Sometimes it's just one of those things. And I mean, without obviously kicking up the dirt of your parents' lives, like in respect of their kind of like, not to air their dirty laundry, as it were. Was it an amicable split in the end? Because I know they split up.
It wasn't a good split, no. There was fallout, but the fallout started pretty much gone now. It's very agreeable now. There's a lot of there is communication, so it's not bad now at all.
But at the time it was.
At the time it was, it was bad.
And the reason I'm bringing this up, there is a reason, listeners. Last time when we were discussing panic attacks, the first ever panic attack that Ben had was at secondary school.
Secondary school.
Was this going on whilst you had your first panic attack? I'm just not trying to establish a kind of a dirty link. You go, it's all their fault. Far, far from it. It's just, as we all know, fight or flight panic attacks. It's all the response of stress.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's how people get it, and it can happen. Stress can come from anywhere, it can come from work, whatever. So, and as a child, I suppose, from my own personal experiences, I can tell you, when your parents argue and you're a little kid and you can't process that kind of emotion, all you want them to do is stop arguing, or you've got a situation that's going on. God, it is absolutely, it's heavy. It sits on you. I suddenly turned to Yoda then. Heavy, it sits on you at will. Sorry. As we said as well, it's an informal podcast. There's a reason it's an informal podcast, so we try to be as kind of loose as possible. So yes. Anyway, how in connection was this with your first panic attack?
It was. I think it was the. It wasn't the beginning of the issues, and it wasn't the end of the issues. It was halfway through it. So it'd been leading up to, it'd been building and building and building, but I think it was the fact I was in a new school that I didn't like. It was terrifying. And at the time I was getting quite severely bullied as well.
Wow.
So I think that was, and I felt trapped at that school. I felt like I didn't have any friends. Well, I had 2 friends. And I was in possibly the naughtiest class in the entire school as well. So
useful, really helpful.
Handy. So I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. If I had been at the school, and I have been to schools that have been absolutely amazing, and have helped me flourish, even when all this was going on at home. But I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was just. Yeah. Mentally, I couldn't take anymore.
Yeah, so that's a lot of pressure. I mean, again, you said 13, 14 when you had your first panic attack. That's a hell of a lot. Because at 13, 14, you're still not fully set, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't think we ever stop fully kind of growing to the person that we are, ever. But I mean, generally speaking, from that level, when you're a teenager, there's a massive difference in like your development from being in primary school and, you know, going into secondary school. Not that 13 is just into secondary school. Obviously, you've been there a year or 2 at that point. But you've got that. You've got stresses like obviously involving the fact that you've got this anxiety with people causing you shit, giving you a load of hell and abuse, being bullied and things. And then on top of that as well, you've got whatever's going on at home when your parents do fight. Not that they're fighting all the time, but when they do fight, and it's not very nice when they do. And then on top of that, you've got the fact that you hate the school. So that's really, really... because you've said in the past, you've said like the school weren't very supportive of you. Because back then, I think, was it the dyslexia?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was just as... it was just after I think I'd been diagnosed with dyslexia. And they weren't supportive in any way.
You can be like that now, and it's gone forward in advancements, and you're 33 now, so we go back, you know, sort of 20 odd years ago. Dear God. Yeah.
It's... As I've developed, I think the dyslexia as a learning difficulty has been a lot more well dealt with as I've progressed. So by the time I got to college and university, it was, oh, you've got dyslexia. Oh, okay, well, come down to the Learning Resource Centre and we'll sort you out. We'll help you. We'll give you all the resources you need. So by the time I got there, it wasn't an issue anymore.
How impactful was the dyslexia with the tensions that you already had, the pre-existing tensions at the time at the school?
I think at that school, it was an issue. Because most of the people who, well, at least one of the kids who was bullying me was put into remedial class with me, so that didn't help at all. So it was a struggle. And the teacher who ran the special needs classes, well, she was brilliant. She knew exactly what she was doing. The problem was the other kids. Which didn't make it. They didn't make it easy to learn, okay. Despite all the teacher did. So yeah, it was definitely.
How are they not making it easy, if you don't mind me asking?
Just every day was just sitting there and having them constantly barrage me with abuse all the time, and I couldn't get away with it. I couldn't get away from it. And if it wasn't in that class, it was in another class or another class. So there was no escape.
Dear God, yeah.
I'd walk into French and there was these 2 girls who were very mouthy, very unpleasant to pretty much anyone who came in, but especially because I was very reserved, very kind of not weak, but a little bit meek, if that makes sense. A little bit reserved and no confidence.
Mm.
And they were like predators. They could smell it coming off me, the lack of confidence.
Once they knew there was an issue, they kind of flock and they kind of like they stick to it. They sort of gravitate to the situation and they know that it's easier to pick on. And I think, I think again for future podcasts, I think bullying will be something we'll go towards because that certainly causes a hell of a lot of issues with people from their past. And I know a lot of people that have been bullied. The effects it has is just devastating, and it can escalate, and it's absolutely terrible. And maybe look into why these things happen. But again, that'll be another future episode where I'll try and get a few more people in regarding that. So you start getting the panic attacks at school. We kind of know a bit of the background regarding that. You go to boarding school. You have the anxiety, from what I remember you were saying, but it starts to clear up, and it doesn't really rear its head until you're about 24, 25. Like really, like when you start getting panic attacks.
Like serious ones, yeah.
Do you mind telling the listeners what actually happened to start the anxiety attacks again? Or I mean, if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine.
With my first, outside of university, after university, I got my first job, my first proper job, not like filling in between on summer holidays, but like proper job, which I really enjoy. I really enjoyed it. It was nice going, I've got a job. I felt really excited about it. And then slowly I got into life properly. And then I ended up with going out with a girl, and she was very closed off. And we only went out for about 3 months, but we spent 2 months of those 3 months arguing pretty much.
Wow.
And I felt like, well, what can I do? What am I supposed to do? I had no. I loved her, but I couldn't speak to her without getting an argument. She was just very closed off. She didn't like talking. And I mean, sometimes we would just sit in silence. We would be in a pub somewhere, and we would just be sitting there in silence, not saying anything, not saying a word. So yeah, it was my first ever proper relationship, and it was kind of, I was thinking,
quite damaging. It's
what have I done?
Yeah, it was like first proper relationship, and the problem with it being the proper relationship, you expect it. I think this is a trap that a lot of people fall into when they get into relationships. They get into a habit. I only say this from my own experience. People can get into a habit, and the habits are like going, well, we're together now, and then you kind of get trapped because if you leave them, it's almost you get the separation anxiety. However, if you stay with them, it could be just as bad, if not worse. And that was definitely the case with me. To the point where it was one of the catalysts that started my panic attacks off when I was at university. And I mean, by the sounds from what you're saying is, you weren't in a...
I wasn't stable.
Stable, yeah. The stable relationship. That was definitely the case. Like, from my experience, if I'm just going to share a little bit about myself, because I've always said I was going to drip feed little bits and bobs about myself. I was in a relationship with a girl at university, and when I went to university, because I always had to look after myself, and I was on the other side of the country, because all I ever wanted to do was make films and act and things like that, and I was just kind of like, okay, all my safety blankets had gone, so that initial anxiety of being somewhere and people are about, and you're like, ooh, do they know me, don't they know me, and you kind of get a bit worried about where it's going. I was very anxious and very kind of alone. I was by myself on the other side of the country, and there was nobody I know. I get with this girl probably within 2 months of starting university, and in fairness, I was very, very fortunate. She was, and it's going to sound really, really big-headed, she was this really beautiful woman, really beautiful girl, very attractive, very bubbly personality, and creative. So I was like, oh wow, just wow, I'm so lucky. And obviously, as I started going with this girl, I realised that she had some serious issues and commitment issues that had happened previously, because she had had her heart trampled on really badly by a guy, and that had such a detrimental effect on her mental health, on her self-esteem, on the way that she viewed future relationships, that it made her very, very overbearing and protective and very controlling, because that I think her own background, without going too much in, because that wouldn't be fair on her, but her own background, she'd had a situation which she hadn't been able to control, and obviously it all went down with control issues with her. And I would find myself, I'm not even joking, for about 8 months of the relationship, we watched nothing but cartoons. And the reason why we watched nothing but cartoons was because if a woman walked past with her top off, I was watching porn. American Beauty, Academy Award-winning film. A girl at the end, obviously completely naked, walks in, and the film's been brilliant, and she's loving it so far. And the moment that happens, she's just like, "Oh, here comes the porn," and I'm like, "What? Hey, what are you on about? It's one of the most beautiful scenes in the film. The whole point is, for this reason. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen American Beauty, but it's a beautiful film, and I was trying to explain this to my girlfriend at the time. She wasn't having any of it. She was just like, no, it's all nonsense. And the problem was, she would then take it out on me, because she was like, right, you're clearly looking at other people because you don't find me attractive. That's the way she was viewing it. So she would let that out on me. Now, a lot of hang on, again, air quotes, I hate doing this, air quotes on radio, really effective. Anyway, a lot of normal, air quotes, people would have just gone, right, this is stupid, goodbye, no, I'm not going to do that, and walk out of the relationship. I, on the other hand, she had become my comfort blanket, and I was like, I can't let her go. She's beautiful. I wouldn't be able to find somebody like that again. And then on top of that, so my confidence issues and the separation anxiety, then on top of that, I'm kind of like, but she treats me like crap, and I was aware of it. It was really, really weird. I mean, a lot more happened, and again, that'll be later on down the line. I think I'll divulge that, I think, on an episode regarding relationships specifically. But it was a very crooked relationship. What should have happened, using the hindsight and the benefit of the hindsight, I should have gone, I'm at university, just have fun, concentrate being at university, and have a laugh with the people who are having a laugh while you can. If you're in a position to have a laugh, do it. As long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you're not being abusive to anybody, just have fun. And I didn't do that. I didn't take that advice, and I wish if I could go back, I would do that. Instead, I got into a relationship, made some sort of, I think because your life's in such upheaval anyway, when you start a new place, a new area, having an anchor that ties you down as some sort of normality will help you get on with your day-to-day basis. And I think, to me, this particular relationship became that anchor. I should have gone, the moment stuff like that happened, gone, right, I don't appreciate you thinking that I'm watching pornography when I watch James Bond films, because I love James Bond. And then have her, when she challenged that, just say, look, I appreciate your concerns, and I see why you're telling me why you don't like this sort of stuff, and I understand that, but I'm not actually watching pornography. I'm watching normal films that have been around since before we were born and things like that. And obviously the moment you say, no, you watch cartoons or you watch nothing, I should have been brave enough. Again, hindsight is all very well and good, but at the time, having that the distance of time and the emotion of being in a healthy relationship with somebody I love, completely different. Now, one of the things I should have done is gone, right, this is silly. I've tried to talk to her. It's not working. I'm really sorry, so-and-so. Have a wonderful life. Hope to see you around, in and around university. You take it easy. Bye. Instead, I kind of clutched onto the relationship tighter, thinking, okay, well, I've got to make her happy. And that's for a whole other set of reasons that I will explain on a future episode. So yeah, having a damaging relationship, or a relationship that is not your typical type of relationship, especially when it's like an adult relationship that you want to be part of, is so detrimental to your mental health, and certainly for anxiety, it puts you on edge.
But also one that you don't feel, one that isn't fulfilling you as well. My second one was pretty much that. I just didn't really feel a connection. I was there for necessity, not for anything else. So, and that can just have, because you end up thinking, well, I don't want to hurt her, but this is pointless. Why am I here? Yeah. And you end up thinking, you kind of end up thinking about other people, and you don't want to, because, you're with this, you made a commitment to this person, but, so yeah, the opposite end of this the spectrum can be just as damaging. Not feeling fulfilled, and then you end up feeling you end up feeling low, and you get there is a word for it, complacent. You end up getting complacent because you just whatever, you just can't do it anymore. And luckily that kind of ended out of my hands, luckily, but I wasn't really feeling particularly anxious then either. I felt.
Do you feel that had gone its natural course, the second relationship, whereas the first one that ended abruptly?
Yeah, and I wanted to hold on to it.
Right. Okay.
Because I hadn't felt that kind of connection in that magnitude ever. My university relationships were just kind of
they're fleeting, aren't they?
Fleeting.
Normally.
Throwaway ones that you learn from them, but you're fully aware that you're going to be leaving in 3 years anyway. So, and if it carries on, brilliant. If not, then you just go up and you just go out. There's plenty more fish in the sea, as they say. And then when it came to the third one, that's when the panic attacks really started to come back again. Because I was trying to please this person all the time, and she had issues as well. So I was trying to juggle too many roles within the relationship: counsellor, chef, butler, cleaner, and it just got to the point where I was doing too much, and not kind of being walked over, I think, being trampled. And that's when it started really getting really bad. To the point where I hadn't really had a panic attack since school, in that kind of, and at the beginning of college as well, in that kind of magnitude as well. So,
interestingly, once those relationships finished, do you still know them as a friend?
One I do, yeah. The one I was having serious panic attacks with, I know her. I still know her and I get on with her very well.
So this just goes to show, just throwing it out to the listeners to put an interjection in there, that even though a relationship can be detrimental and can cause such stress and anxiety, you can still be friends with somebody after it's sorted.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you know, once the dust settles and everything else. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, when it comes to the end of the relationship, were you still having the panic attacks?
Yeah, I was still feeling... Because not only was I without a relationship, I still had some of the issues that carried over. So after the relationship, I felt really bleak, really down. And at that point, that was the point where I thought I really need to start looking into getting help and sorting myself out. And after a lot of beating around the bush, I finally got around to doing it, and I have to say it was probably the best thing, one of the best things I've ever done, because I'm not cured, I'll never be cured, but I do feel like I've got complete control. You've got
to that point where, like you were saying in the last, and going back to episode 1. So if you go back, so obviously this is part 2, for those who haven't listened to it already. You were saying there was that moment on the beach where you were looking at your hands and they were shaking, and you kind of you go back to that now when you have the have panic attacks, and it kind of brings you back. It brings you back from that edge, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break because obviously we were very aware that the first episode was extremely long. We're going to just take a quick break just to showcase some more creative works, like, again, to any new listeners, because it's, again, young podcast. One of the things we like to do is to showcase people's talents. So that can be other podcasts, that can be poems, it could be putting up some information about a new independent film in production, it could be music, and this bit is going to be some music from Whistler's Mother. It's a song which I love. It's called Prisons and Other Cages. I hope you love it too. And again, if you want any sort of music played on Panic Stations UK, or anything you want to throw us a line or anything like that, you can get in contact with us if you want a guest on the show, or if you want to talk about your own prior experiences, or you just want to send some feedback, or you just want to send some creative stuff that you want us to have a bit of a shout out on the podcast itself, because creativity is a fantastic therapeutic way of dealing with many mental health issues. So if you want to get in contact with us, you can get in contact with us via email, and that's at panicstationsuk@yahoo.co.uk. That's panicstationsuk@yahoo.co.uk. And here's some Whistler's Mother. Enjoy.
she was, though the guilt still remains. Could she really be sure? The words on the glass would explain. Would explain. Beneath the halo on the corner of the street stood the wet lonely man that she promised to meet. She stood and watched, but just for a while. She was not really sure if it was right for her now. For her now. Up a suitcase and walked in the door. She wiped her goodbyes from the mirror in the hall, took her last look back and returned to it all, to it all.
There you go. That was a bit of Whistler's Mother for you. Fantastic. Really, really good stuff. Always recommend listening to them. Right. We've been just discussing on some of the Facebook pages regarding things like saying, we put the question out about what support networks do you use, if any, and how comfortable are you with them? Now, we were discussing it last podcast as well, and we were just saying about what we found helpful, and we'll touch upon the things that have certainly been good for ourselves. Just before we go on, we've got one message off Jo Hitchin, a wonderful lady who I know, dear and close to my heart, fantastic lady, married to a fantastic man, and she says her support network equals her husband and her faith in angels and God. It's been far too let down by doctors and the mental health system in general. I do go to the docs if I need to, but I don't rely on them and confide in a couple of really close friends, but it hurts a million times more when you confide in someone and they just don't get it. That's actually an important thing, I think. Sometimes you can pour your heart out to somebody and they have no idea what the hell you're talking about. They kind of just nod and smile, which is really sad. I think it's quite sad. And I think with mental health issues, they're really... Sometimes when people don't get it, it's kind of like we were saying before with people who have panic attacks and people who don't go, oh, for God's sake, just snap out of it, stop being so stupid. And you can't just go, oh, well, I'll just snap out of it.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll make sure I'm not ruining your day anymore, shall I? Yeah, it's hard. And trying to find that kind of comfort base, knowing that people will understand what you're trying to say to them. because there's communications, it's trying to express yourself, trying to vocalise what the hell is going on in your head can be so difficult. It's so mind-bogglingly hard to try and do. It's it's like trying to transcribe bloody alphabet spaghetti. You know what I mean? It's just not gonna happen. So yeah, it's always good to have that. And I think when you have people that are close to you, if you're lucky enough to have the kind of partner like Joe has, like I have with my wife Debbie, just being able to talk to them and know that they're going to listen to what you're saying, take on board, and understand. No prejudgments, no post judgments either. After finding out what the issue is, that's always equally as important. And another good one as well, which obviously Joe was saying there about her faith in angels and God. I mean, again, I am not here, and this podcast is not here to dispute anybody's faith or belief system, and it's whatever is in tune with the person themselves. And I'm not going to turn around and knock that, and I certainly wouldn't want anybody who listens to this podcast to do that either. I actually think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think faith is a good thing no matter what it is in, and whatever belief structure you have is fantastic. And I think when you have that kind of compassion and know that emotional energy from faith that you have, that something higher is guiding you or helping you, that's really of great comfort. And I think that's where religion, faith, organised religions, things like that, get it right. There are things that they do get right, despite people's modern tendencies to slam them. I'm not here to do that, far from it. And I think, it's equally important to have that belief structure. Equally important to have that, as well as, if you don't believe in any of these things, to affirm your faith in other things. That so somebody might have their faith in science, or might have their faith in their friends, if they're lucky enough to have that kind of, like we say, the support structure of friends who can give them what they need. I don't know. I mean, have you ever had issues where you've spoken to somebody and you found yourself in a situation where they've just not understood on any conceivable level, and it's kind of headbanging against the wall?
Yeah, I haven't personally, but I know someone who has been to seek help from a counsellor. And the counsellor got it completely wrong, and said that, and tried to make out that the person had father issues.
So a complete misdiagnosis then.
Instead of just letting, because my counsellor was amazing. She just let me talk, and then when I couldn't really. I said to her, it was like trying to verbalise what's going on in my head. It was like trying to build a jigsaw out of plucking things in the air and trying to put it in some semblance of order. And sometimes, to you, it doesn't make any sense. But if you're telling someone who can see it from another point of view, she can say, well, look at it like this. But the counsellor that my friend had just got it really completely wrong. I don't want to go into details, but he found it particularly unhelpful, and also she I don't think or he or she, whoever the counsellor was, didn't let him speak and really verbalise what he was trying to get across, and the counsellor was always jumping to conclusions. So I think finding, and perhaps it was just because they didn't have a good rapport.
Yeah, it's very important for that.
To find someone who you can identify with, who you can get on with, because there's nothing worse than talking to someone who has who don't have any connection with at all, who you feel like is a complete stranger, and after like 2 sessions you still feel like they're a stranger. So I think I think if you go to counselling and you have a bad experience, I don't think you should just say I've been to counselling, that's it didn't help. I think you've really got to find that right person, a bit like going into a relationship. You need to find that right counsellor for you who can identify with you.
Well, in many ways, I suppose getting a counsellor is very much like being in a relationship, because you're bearing your soul. You wouldn't just say all this stuff to anybody. So it's all your intimate thoughts. So I think you've got the right kind of analogy for that kind of scenario. You need to be in a situation where you feel comfortable when you're telling another person or another party why you feel the way you do. And I think if you don't have that connection, it can be equally damaging. I suppose as damaging as telling somebody that you do have a connection with, that they don't know. And I suppose again, mind you, saying that, if the problems is if you can't confide with somebody that you feel that you could and they don't understand, it makes you feel like shit. Nobody's going to nobody will ever understand me. So yeah, it's a bit of a hard one. I mean, I had an issue going back to, again, always comes back to my love of nerdy stuff, comics. I was in one job where somebody asked me why I still read comics, because I was like, "You're a 25-year-old man. What are you doing reading the Spider-Man comic? That's stupid." And I'm like, to them, I simply say, to those naysayers, I simply say, "Fuck you." No, I'm only kidding. No, but seriously, fuck you. All joking aside, like, basically, I love my comic books. When I was a kid, going into my teenage years, there was an absence of a father figure for some time. And that absence made me seek for father figures elsewhere. And sometimes when that happens to people, they can go off and find themselves in a worse place. They can kind of go with the wrong sort of people, get influenced by them. I was really lucky. I got to hang around with some of the kindest, nicest people ever. A guy who owned a comic book shop, or a comic book stall in Telford, and it became my hangout spot for many weekends. Every Saturday morning into the Saturday afternoon, I'd help out at the stall. I'd get to know all the people that went in there, and it was a community. And all the people that went there, they were lovely, and you get to know them, and and like the guy who ran the place, I never told him this. I'd love to meet up with him at some point, but he became a father figure to me. He was, for all intents and purposes, at one point, my dad. And when shit got bad, I'd call him up, and he'd be there with great advice. And he'd just listen. He was a good man, and all intents and purposes, I haven't spoken to him for many years. Still is a good man. Now, the reason I've slightly gone on a tangent, but the reason I mentioned about the comic books is the fact that I love my comics, but part of my structure of guidance, I suppose, kind of like you have this thing that you use to guide how you behave.
Your moral compass.
Yes, yeah, bang on the nail, man. My moral compass was geared thanks to a lot of the comics that I read. And the comics I read, they weren't all like the really hyper-violent stuff, nothing like that. I love Superman. And I think, if you're going to be a good person, a moral compass being like Superman, like, always being truthful, being kind to somebody, respecting them, that's a pretty good guidance to be. I don't see what the issue is there. Same with Spider-Man, the whole great power, great responsibility thing, and taking responsibility for your actions. Fantastic role model. Feeling ostracised and away from humanity. You've got the X-Men, and that's kind of like teenage life in itself. So there was a lot of ways. And I said, as a metaphor to this one person I worked with, when they asked about why I loved comics and why I still love comics, and this is before the big comic book movie boom, where everybody now goes, "Oh yeah, X-Men, I've been reading them for years." I'm like, okay, yeah, brilliant, okay, whatever. It was a case of just on a side note, if everybody, by the way, who loves comic books, who supposedly watched the films, who have been reading comics for years, had been reading comics, all these people that said they've been reading comics were reading comics all this time, then I'm telling you straight up, there's no way the comic book industry right now would be in the situation it finds itself, where their properties are doing better on screen and their comic books are like, we're not doing good numbers, we're only selling like 80,000 copies worldwide. So, yeah. Anyway, that's just my little rant on a nerdy side of things. So when this person said to me about, oh yeah, why do you love comics? I said, well, kind of in a way. And I decided to confide this kind of moment where I had an absence of a father, where my dad wasn't there. And, I'm very fortunate that I'm in contact with my dad now, and as I've grown up, everything's all cool now with me and my dad, and I love my dad dearly. He was one of my heroes as a kid. He's still one of my heroes now. But for quite a while in my teenage years, some of the most formidable years, he wasn't there, and I was kind of reaching for something. I was reaching for some kind of guidance, and I suppose you can get that from your mum. Obviously, I'm not saying you can't, but for me personally, I was looking for my dad, and when my dad wasn't there, and these comic books were, and I kind of got the moral compass idea from it and everything else, and I explained this to this member of staff that I worked with, and I thought that they would have been sensible enough or emotionally mature enough to go, oh, okay, I see it. And instead, it became oh, right, that sounds really weird. And they went around and told other people they thought I was weird because I said I was raised by the X-Men and Spider-Man. And that's not how I put it. What I actually said was, in a bizarre way, it's kind of like I had a bit of guidance through the moral not the moral compass, but the moral boundaries within the comic books, how these heroes operated, and it was totally blown out of proportion, and I was ostracised and made to feel like a freak, which is really, really, really heartbreaking, especially when you confide that with somebody. And then I remember a person that I worked with in the same company, that you worked with as well, because we both worked for the same place at one point, myself and Mr. Ben. And the next thing this person said when I was working with him was, it's really weird that you read comics and you're a grown man. It doesn't look right. Like, that was a problem. And I was like, okay, that's odd. That's really odd. Yeah. It's really weird how people can react to certain stuff. You have certain stereotypes that people will look into. Certain people can be very closed-minded. And when you meet somebody that your belief is that they are going to be a very open-minded, wonderful individual to talk to, when you find out they're still a wonderful person, but they're a bit more closed-minded than you initially thought, it's really sad and it is crushing. Like Joe quite rightly says, when you confide in some really close friends, and it's great, but it hurts a million times more when you confide in someone and they just don't get it. So when I was confiding, like this bare in my soul, as it were, I'm getting smacked down. Like, one hand is kind of going, oh, you're right, shaking me by it, and the other hand slapping me in the face for daring to be open about something. And that is very hard. And again, that can affect your whole way of how you speak to other people whenever you go into a job or anything like that. I know a lot of people out here, like, listening to this podcast might think, well, you shouldn't have said anything. That's true, but they asked a specific question, and why should I not be myself? It's not like I was reading comics in an area of where I worked in public view of everybody. I was reading them on my break. I wasn't doing any harm to anybody else. I wasn't pushing it in people's faces going, I think Green Lantern and Spider-Man are real. Nothing like that. Nothing utterly nuts. I was just merely explaining why I still read comics and why I liked them. And I think that's... You've got to be so careful. I mean, again, it's knowing your audience, I think. So yes, an exceptionally good response there from Joe, because obviously it lends itself to a much bigger discussion. So thank you for that, Joe. I really appreciate your comments on that. Then we have one from Darren Taylor, another really good guy. He's saying that his support group is his wife, kids and dog. Wife picks me up when needed. Kids give me the focus to keep my mind off my depression and anxieties. Also, the dog helps by going on long walks to clear my head of issues and problems. And I think Darren's got a great point there. I think that that he raised the point of doing that light exercise, like we spoke about, a coping mechanism. If you have an anxiety attack, a good way of dealing with it is to walk around and have very light exercise, because depending on obviously what your state of health is. So yeah, that's very, very important. I mean, and at the same time, I would say that stuff that like your partner, like your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or any of that kind of stuff, always very useful to be able to be lucky enough to speak to somebody you can confide into. And I think being a dad myself, I think I totally relate to the idea that kids are a great focus to snap you out of it. You look at them and you realise how much you love them, and they can help you in such a great way as a support network, because you realise that anything that you do is for them and for your family. And it does, I think, when you have a family of your own, you bring the outside problems less into the internal sort of family unit, because you're more focused on making sure that they're okay. And that's a fantastic point as well by Darren. And again, like pets can be a great thing
and a distraction.
Yeah.
As well.
I mean, like, you've got a pet cat, so have you found that, it sounds really silly, but part of a support group, because they're empathic, man. I remember having a panic attack. I've got 2 cats, Logan and McCoy, again, nerdy me, and I was having a panic attack, and Logan walked up to me while I was having a panic attack and put his paw on my hand to make sure I was okay. They're very empathic cats, and if they want to, despite people saying, oh yeah, they're shallow or whatever.
They're evil.
No, yeah, they're evil and shallow. They want to, any pet that loves you because you become part of their family will try and help you. Apart from perhaps a goldfish. I mean, I don't think holding hands with a goldfish would be perhaps the most sensible thing to do. Very wet. You might kill the goldfish.
Or a snake, which don't actually have hands.
Yeah, that would be weird.
So that's a bit difficult, but yeah.
so what have you found with your pet though?
Yeah. When I've been feeling down or stressed or something, and he appears, and he's not. I wouldn't say he was particularly normal. If anyone has, those of you who have met my cat, or definitely contest to the fact that he's special. In many ways, but it does, the fact that he's so unique, I think really helps.
Yeah.
I mean, just
same with the dogs. You've got a dog as well,
yeah.
And your dog's awesome.
They're both hilarious. They as soon as when you're feeling down or you're feeling low, and one of them comes in and just does exactly what pets do. Just sit there, look at you, or chases a thing around the floor, or with cats doing the back archy thing, whilst sliding along the wall is a brilliant distraction from how you're feeling, and it really does lift your spirits.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it might be scientifically proven to.
Yeah, I think there have been actual studies
to raise the level of mood as well. So
yeah, I can believe that. I can definitely believe that. There's a lot of joy to be had when you enter other people's life and people enter your life, and as much as it can be detrimental when things go bad or go south, or the kind of people that you hang around with, it can be equally fantastic and really helpful and really, really inspiring and really, really positive in your life. So that can really help as well. So have you sort of sought your own support groups? What are your favourite kind of support groups?
Friends, family. But I like the fact that when seeking out help from counsellors, I think is particularly good, because you have no when you have a friend or a family member, there's always that element of what are they going to say,
like a judgment.
Yeah, you're always going to feel slightly nervous about telling them because you don't know what their reaction is. But someone who's paid to listen is always going to, well, hopefully is always going to, well, it's their job. I mean, if they don't do it, then why are they in that job? So the chances of them being able to sit and listen and give you constructive advice are a lot easier. You feel a lot safer because you know that that's what they're there for. So I found speaking to a counsellor very, very beneficial. But also, depending on what the issue is, depends on what I say to what friends. So I haven't just got one friend to talk to everything about. I've got a friend for all seasons, so to speak. And the same with family members. I can't speak to my mum about boy things. I can go to my dad about male troubles. But if it's my mum's a nurse, so if I have a medical problem or I need some sort of help with a medical issue, then I can turn to her. Or if it's something a little bit more embarrassing and I can't turn to my parents, I'll turn to my brother or a friend. Or it really does depend on the issue. And if you're lucky enough to have a number of very close friends, I think that's going to be very beneficial, depending on obviously the issue that arises.
Yeah, friends. Because of the way things went in my life, I've always found my friends became my family, almost in a bad way at times, where I looked at relationships with friends closer than they actually were. Not in a kind of stalkery way, far from it, but in a way where I was like, oh yeah, we're so close, we're like family. And then when people have let me down, like people will let people down because they do, they're human, I've taken it harder than I would normally, because I'm like, hang on man, we're like brothers, why would you do that to me, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that is definitely something that that pops into my head when I think about that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've learned over time in counselling and through my own meandering experiences that when you have somebody that can be in your life, you need to kind of look at it and go, right, there's that. Have you ever seen The Rings? Where you have in the centre, you have like a solid object, that's you, and then you have real close ring around it, like a circle, and that circle is your inner circle, and you put a dot in there to be the representatives of who you could tell anything about, and then it goes out a little bit further, and then it's another circle, and then it's like kind of like force fields on a computer game character or something, and each level of shielding, as it were, another ring, is indicative of where that person is. So your inner circle would be the people you really love. Like, you might have a couple of people that are friends that are like family, because it does happen, and you may have people that are like your really, really close family members or your partner. and then the next ring along is say
the people that you go out with
yeah,
to have fun.
Yeah, you have fun with it. You can have a laugh with it, but you know that you can't, again, going back to that whole know your audience, you can't just say, well, actually, I do this, this and this, because they're like, hang on, what the fuck? And then the next, like, sort of ring, your colleagues that you get on well with, that you can have a laugh with, but then you would keep certain things away, because I've lost track of the amount of times I've heard nightmare stories where people have got pissed with work colleagues, and then their life has been spoken about the next day, and it's just sort of like, and I've witnessed that, and I've just gone, whoa, hang on a second, do you really think it's sort of appropriate that you're talking about that person's life that they've decided to sort of discuss with you in the privacy and comfort of a conversation where you thought it was in private? So there's that. You have your work colleagues like that. Then you have the work colleagues that you get on with, and perhaps work colleagues that you don't, and perhaps your next door neighbour or whatever. And eventually you get a circle, another circle, over another circle, over another circle, sort of petering out from this centre, which is you. And it's kind of like a indicator of where you should keep people on an emotional and an emotional and sort of not so much cerebral level, but an emotional and personal level on how you would what you would discuss with them, if you would go to them about certain issues and so on and so forth. So that's I've always found that ever since that was introduced to me, that was very useful to go back to. So support groups are always important, and it doesn't have to be anxiety or depression. It could be for anything, any mental illness. I've got friends who, once they knew this podcast was starting, they were like, oh, I want to be on, because I want to talk about this, this and this. And I'm like, well, that's a whole show. Yeah, of course you can. And things like that. And they're being really brave, and they're coming forward with their stories that they want to share with the world and say, look, again, like our motto is, you are not alone. You are not alone. You don't have to go through this stuff alone. You always have a support group, be it through places like a simple podcast like this, or a page on a website, or your therapists and counsellors. I'm not discounting, like you said, quite rightfully so, the power of having an actual counsellor. Because that's great. It's an impartial person who's trained to listen to you. And like I said at the beginning of every episode, it's always preferable. You always go to your GP, your therapist, your counsellor first, and then this kind of stuff isn't the stuff to cure the problems. If it does, fantastic. But if it doesn't, it's not there for that.
But this is just a stepping stone in many.
It's a support group. That's exactly what it is.
Routes.
And that's exactly that's exactly what it is. It's a support group. It's something to put in a toolbox that you can use many, many times over, and that's always really, really important to do. So anyway, on our way out, we're going to just say goodbye to everybody, but just before we end today's podcast, because we've got some great stuff coming up, my wife and my little girl have just come in. Hello, Baba. She's not been very well, bless her. Have you Skybugs? That's Skylar. You're right, she's passing me a menu because we're being lazy and we can't be bothered to cook tonight. So, yes, I'll get something, and my wife's just brought her in. So, anyway, we're going to say goodbye. We're going to leave you with some going away music. And as the man cave where I record this podcast gets destroyed by my little girl tapping at all the glass cases full of nerdy stuff, we're going to play you out by some music, with some music by a man called Stevan Williams, who was very generous to say, look, play some of my music. Fantastic track, actually, to be fair. And like I said before, we've got lots of different types of music that we like to showcase. Anything creative, please feel more than welcome to get in contact with us. And you can get in contact with us by the email, which is panicstationsuk@yahoo.co.uk. That's panicstationsuk@yahoo.co.uk. Oh dear, are you alright? That's my little girl coughing away, bless her. And we're going to play you out with Stevan Williams' song Celtic Mist, this fantastic track in fairness. I'm not a massive dance music fan, but in fairness, this is actually quite chilled out. So until next time, people, take care. Thank you very much, Ben, for being a part of
My
this.
pleasure.
He'll appear in future episodes, I'm sure, Mr. SDC. And I will catch you later. Next time, take care.
What we've